What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be making another NBA video. Today I'm gonna be listing all teams in tiers in a tier list from the best to the worst, basically. So at the top, as you can see here, we have top contenders. Top contenders are teams that I believe are the favorites to win the championship. Even if they do have their weaknesses, they are the best in their conferences, and in most matchups they will succeed and be able to make it to the finals. But after that, we have contenders. Contenders are teams that are a little bit worse than the top contenders, but they can make it to the finals depending on the path that they get. But they do have some matchups that they'd rather avoid than to have to go up against. Dark horses are teams that I believe have very low floors but very high ceilings. So basically, a team that can beat the best of the best in their conference, but can also lose the worst in the conference because they're so unpredictable. But they could, if all the stars line up, win a championship next season. And after that, we have low tier playoff teams, which are teams that which are gonna make the playoffs, but I don't think they will be able to make a run. Like, an eighth seed, a seventh seed. They'll probably just lose to the first and second seed. And low tier teams are teams that I believe aren't gonna make it to the playoffs. They're just gonna be there, basically losing games, giving easy W's to the top, to the other tiers, and they're just there, trying to get a good draft pick for next season. But that's pretty much it. So let's start off with the Philadelphia 76ers. I believe the Philadelphia 76ers are a dark horse team for next season. I do believe that the Philadelphia 76ers could match up well against many teams, especially depending on whether Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid come back next season looking great. For example, if Ben Simmons were to, for example, get a jump shot all of a sudden, he would be able to be amazing for the 76ers. Like, even just like shooting 30% from 3 would be great for the 76ers and would do wonders for them. But I do believe that they can beat the Milwaukee Bucks, for example, if they were to match up. But at the same time, I could see them losing. Not Let's not go as far to say as like the worst team in the Eastern Conference, but they could lose in the second round to just about anybody. Like, or even in the first round if they get an unfavorable matchup against like a Boston Celtics or a team like, the Miami Heat, for example. Like, they're very sporadic, but they can beat anybody, but they can also be beat by anybody. Next up, we have the Washington Wizards, obvious low tier team. I don't think that John Wall is gonna be that great next season. I do think that he's gonna have his issues when it comes to coming back. He's gonna be very rusty, and it just Bradley Beal's a great player, but last season he averaged 30 and the team still didn't make the playoffs, so I doubt that this season is going to be much any different. Next up, the Atlanta Hawks, I do believe will be a low tier playoff team. I do believe that this is the Atlanta Hawks season to make the playoffs. They will be in the they will basically be in a much improved team from last year, but they still don't match up. I don't think they match up against a team like Philadelphia, for example, or Milwaukee, or any Heat, the Boston Celtics, the Toronto Raptors. I don't think that they will be able to match up well against those teams. Cleveland is just trash. They're not gonna make the playoffs next year. They don't have many great pieces. They have a very bad mix of players. A lot of old and young players on that team, and it just won't mix well. Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons. Detroit Pistons, low tier team too. They've lost many pieces, and they haven't been able to. I think they're gonna build for the future, because right now the team that they got is not good enough. Blake Griffin, I don't know how he's gonna come back, how he's gonna perform, but even if he performs well, I can't see them making the playoffs. Indiana Pacers are a low tier playoff team. They're good, but they're not contenders or even a dark horse. I think they're just not good enough. They're not. Miles Turner, they got a few young good pieces, but they're not good enough to make the playoffs. They lost what's his name? They lost their point guard, and honestly, their point guard was one of their better players, but you know, it's just they're not good enough. Milwaukee's a top contender. I do feel like Drew Holiday is gonna be a very good piece for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's a very good defensive piece, making their defensive backcourt very good, and their front court was already amazing defensively. Now they'll be able to guard the three better, and Drew Holiday can produce points for you in bunches. Toronto is definitely either a contender or a dark horse. I I would say that they're a dark horse. I feel like they've gotten worse. Basically because of the fact that they just lost both of their amazing big men that they had, and because their their status has dropped this season. Like, they went from, oh, how are they gonna do with Kawhi, and like, oh, they're actually doing very well without Kawhi, to now people realizing that, oh, Siakam and Lowry can't lead a team to a championship. It's just not. It doesn't happen. It's very hard for them to create offense when it's just them two. They need the superstar. I think that the Mavericks are either a dark horse. They're definitely like top tier dark horse, if not contender. I'm gonna put them up as a contender because I do feel like Porzingis is improving a lot very quickly, and Doncic is probably gonna be a superstar next season. He was already a MVP caliber player this season. He was like number 5, I'm pretty sure, number 5 or number 6. But they're definitely a contender. The Denver Nuggets are. Oh my god. I think they were contenders last season, but they lost Jeremy Grant, so I'm gonna put them up as a dark horse. I think they're dark horses this season. Basically because they lost Jeremy Grant, and Jeremy Grant, he was scoring 20 points, and he was a good shooter, and he could defend the other team's best player, and it was a great stabilizer. But now that they lost him, it's gonna be very hard for them to create offense at times. And it's kind of sad, because I don't know why Denver didn't match the offer that Jeremy Grant got. I guess they didn't value him like that, but Jeremy Grant was definitely important. It's sad to see that Denver lost him, but I do think that they will still be very good team. They will still be a very good team looking forward. I think Memphis is a low tier playoff team. Very good team. They will probably make a better push for the playoffs this season than last season because they will have Jaren Jackson Jr. again. Jaren Jackson Jr. was actually very underrated last season, but he was actually a very key role for. He actually did play a very key role for the Memphis Grizzlies making it to the playoffs. And as you can see, he got injured and the Memphis Grizzlies just couldn't come back. The Minnesota Timberwolves are also a low tier playoff team in my opinion. D'Angelo Russell has proved that he can will a team into the playoffs before with the Brooklyn Nets, but will he be able to do it in the West is the real question. I do think that they are much better than every single team in here, and I don't want to put them as a low tier team. I do think that they are a playoff team. They will be able to make their case to make the playoffs. I do believe that on their best days, they're probably a little bit better than the Memphis Grizzlies, if we're being honest here. But, it all depends on how they mesh next season and if D'Angelo Russell is really as good as he was a few years ago. San Antonio, It's sad. It's very sad, but they are a low tier team, and you have to be honest. They didn't perform to the level that they should have last season, and it was a very tough. It's probably gonna be a very tough time for the San Antonio Spurs fans because they're so used to being in the playoffs all the time, making runs or the finals, and now they're back to rebuilding. And it's gonna be a very hard thing to rebuild because they have so many veterans. They don't have many young pieces, but I think they will make it work because their front office is actually very smart, and they'll probably be back in like 2 to 3 years. They'll probably be back to the playoffs. The Utah Jazz are a dark horse. The Utah Jazz are a very good team. Out of all these teams, I feel like they are the the weakest, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit better than the 76ers. But the Utah Jazz, I underrated them last season. I'm not gonna lie, but they really surprised me, especially Donovan Mitchell, especially in the playoffs when he was scoring 50. I think that has to do a little bit with the bubble and the fact that it was basically like shoot around. Basically, these players, they shoot around 90% when they're by themselves. So in a bubble, they all thrived. In my opinion, they should have all thrived, but I guess not all of them did because we have the Clippers, a top tier contender. You have to put them at the top tier because they are still a very good team, but they choked. You just gotta. It's true. They choked. The Denver Nuggets, they were up. The Clippers were up 3-1, and they let the Denver Nuggets come back. It's pathetic. If LeBron did that, he would be killed, massacred, crucified, everything that you could do, tortured too. But the Clippers are still top contenders. They gained Ibaka and a few other pieces this offseason, and they will probably be back to Malcolm Brogdon. They that's the player that the Indiana Pacers lost, Malcolm Brogdon, and now the Clippers have him. So the Clippers are probably gonna be back next season. They're probably gonna be a very good team, but they're not. They lost some of that fire and animosity that they had last season in Montrez, and also this year they won't be. They probably won't be the favorites until something crazy happens because of the fact that they just lost to Denver, and a team that we will be talking about later has gotten so much talent. The Phoenix Suns are a low tier playoff team to me. I do believe that they can make the playoffs. The thing about this is that all three of these teams are capable of making it to the playoffs, but they are also capable of not making it to the playoffs because the other two made it to the playoffs, and maybe even more teams that I might add here in the Western Conference that might make the playoffs. But the Phoenix Suns, with their addition of Chris Paul, are now gonna probably make the playoffs because Devin Booker and the team were already so meshed together in a way that they were probably already very confident about making it to the playoffs. But now with CP3 on the team, their confidence is probably through the roof. And the thing is that the Phoenix Suns are a top tier team, and I do. No, not a top tier. They're definitely not up there. I mean a top tier, low tier playoff team. That's what they are. Next up, the Portland Trailblazers are dark horses to me for next season. I know I have a lot of dark horses in here, and it's like, okay, you can't have that many dark horses. Well, you can, because a lot of teams are very close, in my opinion, to start off this season. And the thing is that they're very close because a lot of players were moved around, and a lot of top tier teams did lose a few good players, a few good pieces, and a lot of them gained some. Like for example, Milwaukee, they were last season they were top contenders, of course, but when you really delve into it, they were more like contenders and not top tier contenders, But now they're definitely up here with the top contenders now that they have Drew Holiday. Sacramento is a low tier team, in my opinion. They need to get rid of Luke Walton in order to succeed, in my opinion. In my opinion, Luke Walton just slowed down the game so much for them that the Aaron Fox just isn't as productive as he used to be in the old system, because this new system is so slow and it just doesn't benefit anybody on the team. They need a new coach in order to make it to a low tier playoff team and above. But I do believe that as the time continues and the Aaron Fox and Marvin Bagley get better, I do believe they can make it up here and even over here, and they might even be contenders one day. But as it is right now, low tier playoff team. No, low tier team. The Knicks are low tier team too. They just their organization is so bad right now. They have no pieces. They have nothing to build around, and their future is so uncertain. They could be rebuilding for forever now, because their team is just not made to, oh, we have this piece, we're just gonna build around that piece. No, they don't have anything right now. Nothing. New Orleans Pelicans. That's 4 teams now in the Western Conference that I believe can make it to the 8th, 7th, and 6th seed in the playoffs. But I do believe that I have seen a few pictures of Zion, and recently a few news articles saying that he's very skinny, and if he's really good, honestly, like in my opinion, the highest chance of these teams to make it to the playoffs is definitely looking something like this, with Memphis having the least amount of chance, but these two are very close, interchangeable in my opinion. But then these two teams, I'm pretty sure they'll be making a serious push to make it to the playoffs next season. The Charlotte Hornets are trash. They're just trash. They lost a lot of pieces and they're just not good. The Hayward ain't gonna save them either. Dark horse or contenders, I think they're dark horse. Unless they trade away James Harden, I do believe that they will be contenders to dark horse, and that's not gonna change anytime soon. The Miami Heat are also dark horses to me, because they made it all the way to the finals last year, but the thing is that they had a very easy path when you really think about it. Like, favorable path, not easy path. Milwaukee was not easy. Against any other team, they would have probably made it to the conference finals. But they had a favorable path, favorable matchups against teams that relied on going into the paint. And they played great defense, but I don't believe that they are. You know what? I'm going to move them up to contenders. The Chicago Bulls are low tier team to me. They didn't make any big changes. They fired their coach, who was very bad, but other than that, their players are almost exactly the same as last year, and as long as nobody makes a crazy leap, they're a low tier team. The Nets are contenders. I'm not gonna put them as a top contender because of the fact that we don't know how good KD is gonna be. If KD comes back and he's amazing and he's just like how he was before, top contender 100%. But for now, since we don't know how good KD's gonna be, they're just contenders. The Thunder are a low tier playoff team. A low tier team. I do believe that the reason why they made it to the playoffs was heavily it was basically because of Chris Paul. They lost Chris Paul. And you could have said, Dennis Schroeder was gonna carry them. Dennis Schroeder's gone too, so it's not looking good for the Thunder. They're back into rebuild mode, and honestly, this isn't bad. Them being a low tier team isn't bad for them. Like, they'll still be able to make a few moves. They have a lot of pieces. Thanks to Paul George, and they're gonna be able to do amazing things in the future thanks to all these pieces that they have. And the Warriors are a low tier playoff team. I believe they're like right here, probably 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed, 9 seed, 10 seed. That's probably how I see it. if anything, because this is 4, 3, 2, 1. That's how I see it. Yeah. So let me just top contender right there. These, I think they're contenders. They can only get better, in my opinion. Like, Gordon Hayward's gone, but they have a trade exception now that they could use on a very expensive player if they wish to use it. And they have so many pieces. It's incredible. They will definitely be in the top tier. Magic are probably gonna make the playoffs once again. It's sad to see, but it's true. They're probably gonna make the playoffs. But this is my tiers right here. This is how I see it going for next season. So yeah, this is like top tier contenders, dark horses, low tier playoff teams, and low tier teams. Honestly, I think I did pretty good. Look, it looks like a stairwell. Pretty good stuff. I'm gonna look it over to see if I like to change anything, and I'll get back to you guys in a second. So I think this is how I'm gonna keep the tiers. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. Have a great day, and look forward for my next upload. Subscribe, turn on the notice, and like the video. Thank you for everything. Peace.